A 1950s housewife living with her husband in a utopian experimental community begins to worry that his glamorous company may be hiding disturbing secrets. This is rated R and it is considered a thriller. Let's talk about what the movie actually, how the movie starts. And we're going to really break down, you guys. In this video, we're going to break down really the quality of the movie, what to look for, the healing and the philosophical messages. But I'm just going to hit you right now with saying that this movie is all about social commentary. I mean, if you are not in a good relationship with your partner, you're going to have discussions about this. Even in good relationships, you're going to end up having discussions about this, and they could lead to arguments. I'm just letting you know, because there are so many embedded things in this story that are literally talking about things that we're going through right now in society that has to do with equality. So why don't you start off by telling the kind of the first shot and what you saw when the movie started.
Oh, the first thing I got from the beginning of the movie was that it felt like it was like a scene from Pleasantville.
Yeah.
And then soon after I felt this whole The Village thing from M. Night Shyamalan.
Okay, tell them why, because some people may have not seen
if
that.
If you're observing the movie, if you're into the movie, you're like, okay, what is going on here? Because you know something is already not right? Didn't you feel like, wait, this is not reality? And you could tell how people are acting.
Well, because it gave you that Pleasantville thing that was like, it felt
timepiece. It was like that weird.
Yeah, it was nostalgic, but it also made you feel uncomfortable because we're not living in that right now.
Yeah.
And we've seen tons of movies about the 50s and all that, but there was something also very modern about it that made us feel like, didn't you feel slightly uncomfortable with what you were witnessing, even though everything was beautiful?
Yeah. You knew it was fake.
Yes, it didn't feel like it was really in the 50s. In fact, I said that right off the bat. I said, I feel like this is going to be like M. Night Shyamalan's movie, The Village, where it's like, the whole time you're thinking that they're in this one location and it's in a certain time period, and then you realize that beyond the fence it's like modern day civilization. Yeah. I felt that way from the beginning. Like it's set. The movie is set. First of all, let's say the movie is set in. It's like
the 50s for sure.
Set in the 50s in California desert. You have, I wish I knew what the name of this style of building was back in the day, but it was a very, very, like, all the homes on the streets were architecturally from the 50s. They were all pristine. Every car in the driveway
Spanish
was like
bungalow type of
they
stuff,
were like these. No, they're not called Spanish bungalows though. They have a really specific name for them, and I
Art
can't.
Deco.
It was all very perfect, and we've seen this before from what you said,
Old Hollywood.
Yeah.
Palm trees.
And then there's this main guy that they show us, and we all know that he's the guy that's in charge, right? And his name's Frank. And I was saying, I'm like, oh, okay, this dude is like, he's living like he's living in some. I just got this sense that something was up with the setting. You knew that he created all of this for everyone to come in.
Yeah. You
knew he was the big dog. You look at the setting, and the first thing I'm thinking of is this guy is pretending to be Frank Sinatra in the 50s, in the house that he lived in. Because Frank Sinatra had a house like that, and something felt very like saccharine about the whole thing. Everyone was blissfully happy.
That's how you know it was creepy.
Yes, well, and here's the other thing, and this is where I said the social commentary really comes in, because it from the get-go was very misogynistic, but in a way that made everybody seem so pleasantly happy. Like all the women were so well cared for and very loved by their husbands, and everyone had tons of food, and all their homes were perfect.
Were nice,
and there was
nice
lots
cars. They all had good.
Everything
nice
was
cars.
perfect,
pristine.
But to the point where there was no diversity in like, not everybody is at the same level of success right? Like if you would normally see different people in their homes, you would even notice different levels of
Yeah.
how good the relationship
Yeah.
is, or different levels of what they have, or how
Yeah.
nice the house is, or
Yeah.
different personalities even.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And we weren't seeing any of that. Every single household was exactly the same. And then it was really just really focusing in on the women. The men go off and work, the women stay home and cook and clean, listen to programmed messages all like for
Yeah.
a certain amount of time every morning while they do their chores. They're listening to the same guy who created this whole, like, what do you even call it, like a
Commune.
neighborhood, or
It
yeah,
was like, yeah,
it's
a commune.
basically like a commune, but it doesn't feel like
It's
that.
like a little town that got created, like a
He
suburb,
like he
a new
created a
suburb.
suburb. Yeah, like he
A
created
suburb.
this suburb, and you know that there's only certain people that are there. And then the story is every day the guys go off into corporate headquarters, and it's way far down, like it's in a mountain
Yeah.
ridge. It's in the mountain actually, and
Yeah.
you see there's like a hole that they all drive
Yeah.
into the,
Driving through the desert.
and
to
they're
get
all
there.
like what, engineers or something
Yeah.
like that. And we never get to know what they do. And they make it so that it's also very it's very mysterious what they do. They want
Yeah.
us to feel that it's mysterious, even to the women. The women
Yeah.
don't really even know. They may know the title of what their man does, but they don't know any
Yeah.
details about it. And all they know is that they're supposed to never ever go to headquarters.
Yeah. Or ask and inquire about their job, what they do, their
Yeah.
husband's job.
Because it's kind of like everything's
Yeah.
top secret,
Yeah.
right?
Because they all live, it's like a resorty type of vibe too, right? Because
Yeah.
everything is pristine.
It's perfect.
Yeah, it's like a
Everything's
perfect.
perfect.
It's like, okay, this imaginary perfect world for people.
Yeah, very PC.
Yeah.
Right? And then that's one of the other things that we looked at too. It's like, you look at the makeup, there was more white people than anything else, but they had one Asian woman, they had a black husband and wife, they had an Indian man, and,
Yeah,
and I don't know
and a
who
Middle
he was
Eastern
coupled
or
with. There
some
was a
kind
Middle
of-
Middle Eastern woman.
maybe a Greek looking, Latina looking person. So they plugged in all the right things of.
But it
now.
was almost like they did that on purpose because that was the PC thing. And I'm not saying that as a movie, like in real life, that's what they did. I'm saying that they did that on purpose as part of the movie. To create
more tension, actually.
more tension in the fakeness of it.
Yeah.
And how people. So what was really interesting, I
We
mean,
could go
there's
off.
so much, and
Yeah.
we really got into some serious,
Yeah,
like,
we went way down the
discussion.
rabbit hole. We could get. There's so many things you could discuss about this movie because we're just gonna talk about the movie in general, not get too crazy, but there is a lot of stuff that you could just continue to talk about. So.
Right now, our world is really focused in on women's rights, not just women's rights, all rights, right? But the women's movement is something that is really, really powerful right now, and with our rights being taken away, and everything that's going on with Roe v. Wade, this is like a really powerful message, because what you're seeing in this movie is the misogyny. There is so much misogyny, and we had to talk about what that actually means. And this is what they wanted us to actually discuss, is the way in which we perceive women, right? That they're showing us almost ad nauseum. They're showing us how happy women are cooking and cleaning and staying at home, and vacuuming in their high heels and their their vintage dresses, and
Husband comes home, they're like in this beautiful gown, looking all beautiful.
right. And part of this movie was that the women all cooked 5-course meals for their husbands every day. They did their chores happily. It was showing you in the movie all of these things but it was also showing you the mindlessness of it. They were showing. I got annoyed in the very beginning because it was starts off at a party,
Yeah.
and it was so much nonsense.
Yeah.
It was like drinking and laughing, and it was so much about nothing. But not in a. I don't know. It there's a time and place for all of that. Like I
Yeah.
feel like there is a time and a place to just be nonsensical, but there was something about it that was so phony baloney and it was so meaningless.
Yeah.
But then everyone was like,
Yeah. Yeah.
including a pregnant woman drinking alcohol.
Oh yeah, they're yeah.
Get her another drink. She's
Yeah,
pregnant, It's like,
yeah, it's like
and we're like, what?
yeah, that's how it started, right? Like with all
Yeah,
that,
and it got me a little annoyed because one, I don't, I get annoyed with meaningless conversation stuff because I think that, it doesn't have to be heavy conversation, but it could be a little more meaningful, and it just seemed so saccharine. And then it goes into all this other stuff where, they know that by showing all of this, they're going to be getting a reaction out of the women in the audience, right? But what they're doing is they're showing it to you in a way that women are blissfully happy in these settings, right? I picked up on a lot of that, but at the same time it didn't make me. I wasn't angry.
right?
I wasn't going, oh, they're putting women in these roles. It was more just like we're outsider looking in at a depiction of what life was like in the 50s for these women and how they all seemed blissfully happy. I had to laugh about it. Seemed like every single time the man got home, and we're mostly following one couple through this whole thing. And it's like the minute he comes home, she's like you said,
Yeah.
in a gown, she's made a 5-course meal. And then he comes home and immediately they're having sex every single time he comes home from
Yeah.
work. And she's knocking all of her food off
Yeah.
of the dinner table,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
she's slaved
It was-
over.
it was kind of like a
and I'm
bait-
like, wait,
like,
but
wow.
those were the peas,
Yeah, those are some good bread there.
Wait,
Well,
you
I
just
guess
knocked
they
the potatoes.
I think I said they decided to go backwards. They do dessert last.
Yeah.
Well,
But there's a
moving on,
there's a darker edge
that's
to that
the beginning.
to the movie.
That's definitely what you're all talking about. Yes, because you explained a lot there too. But the bigger in this movie, you're gonna see what the bigger picture is too, along with this
Gender rolling.
gender roles, but
Yeah.
also about control. This movie is about
Which is what gender
control.
roles
Yeah,
was about,
and just in
is
general, that whole idea of controlling someone else's destiny or their own ambitions in life and
Yeah.
controlling. And there's a lot of those type of things we catch on in the movie as the relationship develops and as we're trying to figure out what the heck's going on in this movie.
Yeah.
Because when you say the first part of the movie, it kind of drags a little bit, because I know you don't like stories that drag a little bit because you're like, oh, let's get to it. But
Because we do know the whole time that whatever we are not supposed to know is
we
is
already
that
know
corporate.
this is not right. What's going to happen?
Well,
because
we know that there's something wrong
going
because
on.
everybody is forbidden to go to corporate except for the men in this story,
Yeah.
and
they
so
only-
we
and they
know
live only
something
in one
is
area. They
right.
only live and they can't go off. There's like this private community, so it's like okay.
And anytime that the women are having conversations about something that that is questioning what is
what is the man
there's
doing?
other women that are like, don't talk about
Yeah.
that.
We're here to be docile. We're here to be subservient and
so it's
do
building
our role. It's building roles, strong
Right.
roles in your place in society.
right, and the whole time too, it's like the men who go to work and the person who created all of this, they all feel grateful to be there, right? So there's this thing that you need to be on your, you need to be on your toes, and the men always have to make sure that the women are happy and keep everyone happy. That way they can continue to live in this bubble, right?
Yes.
This little bubble. And so it builds some of the tension because you start to see that certain people want a little bit more.
Right.
And this is causing tension in the movie. And,
Yes.
and in one part, there is a woman who ends up like she doesn't want to be there anymore, and this is where we get the insight
Yes,
into.
that's when the movie starts going. Okay, now we're getting to.
But it's
Where's the
still.
spookiness? There's nothing gory or anything because you think.
Well, there's some
Yeah,
blood
there's
in this
some,
movie,
but
but
it's
I
not.
I wanted it to be more
A little
like
bit
spooky
more,
and scary
like
and thriller, right?
yeah.
Like more jump scares and stuff like that. And what it turned out to be was more of a think piece.
Yes.
This is more of social commentary
With a little bit of a little bit of thriller.
It's thriller because you don't know.
Because you see some stuff.
So you see some gore,
a couple.
but
There's only like a couple
things.
scenes. There's only like 2 scenes.
And it goes really fast. So if you are squeamish to blood, you're not going to see anything really terrible. You're going to see some blood, but you're not going to see guts or anything like that. But I found myself like wanting them to get to it faster. Like I know something's wrong now. You've spent enough time on telling me that there's something over there that we're not supposed to see, and then you've got this one couple where this one girl the family that we're following, or the couple that we're following, she starts to pay attention to this other one who is having difficulties and problems, and it triggers.
And it's her friend.
It's her friend, and it triggers something in her to want to know more. But then you start to see how she's forbidden to know more, and this feels very constrictive and controlling. And the more controlling she realizes there is, the more she wants to know more, and this is where the tension starts.
Want to know more too, as viewing, because we want to know. Okay. What's really going on? We all want to know what's going on at this other place where all the men are working.
So the control is building up, and we're starting to really see that the control is all with the men.
Yeah.
The men have all this control, and the women are still stuck in the 50s doing these things, and they're supposed to all be happy, but you start to see cracks in that pavement, right?
Yeah, I think then there's that part in that first scene where we start hearing or start seeing the women, or one of the women, having these voices coming up in her head, or something going on in her mind,
like little flashbacks
or something like that,
and humming.
Humming.
She keeps humming, and it's like, where is that humming coming from?
So that makes you start thinking, like, oh,
is she remembering something,
or is this something they're controlling their minds, or right? For
and there's
me,
a few mind
I start
control
jumping into
issue.
conclusions, like which we all do when we're watching a movie like that. We're like, wait.
Because it literally happens, right? Yeah. Because the more that she starts questioning things and doing things that she's not supposed to be doing, the more some really weird,
or nightmarish, or
what do you call those when it's like It's almost like they want us to believe that she's having a hallucination. There, these weird little things start to happen to her the more that she starts to go off path and go rogue, right? And so it takes a long time for us to get to the point where we kind of discover what is really happening. What did you think about the party? There's one big party where they're going, and I guess once a year they have this big bash, and everyone dresses up.
It's like the big company.
The
hoo-ha.
The company hoo-ha.
Yeah, the big company.
And the guy who created this whole suburb is throwing this big bash, and so everybody's really excited to be there, and it's really fun. It's actually one of my favorite scenes, because the best part, I think, of this movie is that Dita Von T was in it.
Oh yeah,
because
you told me that.
Yeah, because in this big party where everybody's dolled up, you get to see some of Dita Von T's burlesque. And if you don't know her, she's really famous for doing burlesque. And so I was happy to see her in it, that she actually got put in a movie, which is so cool. You can follow her on Instagram too, because then you'll see who I'm talking about. But that was really fun. It was like entertainment to actually watch a little bit of her show. Yeah. But then it gets really a little weird. So what was your perception?
Well, we didn't talk before that scene. Remember what happens before the wife starts picking up on things and questioning things, and he was able to catch on some of that.
Who's he? Her husband?
No, the main guy. I don't remember what his name was though.
Frank.
Oh yeah,
Frank Sinatra. He wanted to be Frank Sinatra.
Yeah, Frank Sinatra. Yeah, the Frank Sinatra guy.
And he looked like it. Like how you would see Frank Sinatra all young and like dapper and handsome.
And I think it was almost planned, because he saw what was happening. Some people were starting to recognize certain things happening in the community, and he was noticing that from the husband's wife. The two main couple, and then that actual company thing happened. Like the company hoo-ha, the bash,
Party.
the little party thing, right? So that happened right after. And that's when, remember, got put on stage, and he gave him like a promotion to work more of as an executive person, in the company.
Yeah, but what was your perception of it?
My perception was sabotage.
In what way?
It was a way of sabotage and control. It's by him giving more power to someone, the man will feel like, oh, I'm obligated to be subservient to someone who gave me a higher position. Right. So anything that person says, what I have to do for my wife or expectations, it changes the role.
The dynamic, the power dynamic.
And where does the loyalty really lie?
Yeah, and that's where it became really uncomfortable and clear, right, is that when he calls this guy up onto stage, and the guy has no idea that he's going to be called. This is a surprise. Now, normally, when you're going to be given some promotion, you have an inkling that it's coming. Yeah. It's something that you've talked about, you've interviewed for, you've been considered for this position. If you're already in it, it's not a surprise like someone just throws you into being a board member. Like, you know it's coming, right?
Right.
So when he gets called up on stage, and the husband is aware that his wife is going rogue, he's aware that something is wrong. She didn't even want to go to this party either.
Yeah.
And
that's why
because she was really she was having troubles, and it seemed like by the way that that Frank, the creator of all of this, he knew. And how did he know? We don't know. But somehow he knew already that something was up with her, because across the room they keep locking eyes, and he's giving her like this knowing glance.
He knows. By that time, you
like
kind
he
of
knows.
know.
He knows. He knows
like
something's
there must
up.
be everyone's being watched.
Right. I got the sense that everybody was on camera,
but it happens
and he was
so
able
naturally.
to see it.
You just
they never
know.
show us that they're on camera, but you
just know.
You know that they are.
By
They're all
that
being
time,
watched.
for sure.
So when Frank goes up on the stage, and then he calls her husband up, the husband has a weird look on his face, and it's almost like fear.
Yeah.
Right? He almost has a fearful look, because
like
he didn't know. Yeah. He didn't know he was going to be given a promotion to a very important position in the company, which was weird in itself. Yeah. Why wouldn't he know that? Why does he have this weird look on his face? And then it just starts to really go and go. So he gets this promotion, and the wife freaks out because she understands
what's happening.
This means we're locked into this place, and I don't want to be here anymore because something is really wrong. And then Frank looks at her like, gotcha, right?
Checkmate.
Yeah, checkmate. Your husband is now beholden to me, and you're stuck here, right? So you get this power dynamic shift. And then the other weird thing that we see on stage, and we start to wonder, like, what is this reality?
He's given a ring.
Yeah, he's given, which felt weird.
Which was weird. It was like an executive ring. You know how certain people get certain gifts or get a watch or something like that.
Yeah.
At first, I thought that ring had special like properties that made him do stuff like a clown. Because we made him dance on stage.
Well, I was just going to talk about that.
But that's why I thought maybe the ring was like what they were working on, like kind of control people. Like that's what I.
You were just trying to think of what's going on.
I was trying to think what's going on, but I was like, it didn't seem like he wanted to dance.
The whole and the thing is this is where it really became clear to me what was going on, is that, spoiler alert, that this was really about being in a virtual reality. Okay. Yeah. Because when he's on stage, he gives him this ring, which I thought was such an awkward thing, and he's looking at him, and it's almost like, you're married to me now.
Yeah.
It felt weird. I felt really weird seeing, him put a ring on his finger, not because, a man and a man getting married.
It's that ritual that we're accustomed to.
It felt weird because it felt like ownership of a person. It felt bad. It did not feel comfortable, and the recipient was not comfortable with it. He knew he was getting locked into something, and he was going to have to deal with that dynamic change with his wife, and he didn't know where that was going to go either, because she was starting to break down. So then when I started to realize, I think this is about a virtual reality, because I already felt like everything was fake.
Yeah.
It was too perfect.
But to what extent,
hold on.
though?
Yeah, but so what? When he starts, it's this big celebration and everybody's going, yeah, he got promoted. Yay. It wasn't just a typical like, oh, congratulations. It turned into this crazy, like party atmosphere. And then Frank is like the creator of everything. You're going to dance for us and dance. And then he's saying, let's see this guy dance, and it was almost like he was saying it out loud, and somebody was programming into this guy that he has to now dance on stage, and it was this really long
weird. And it looked like he didn't want to, and it looked like he did. That's why I was saying I thought the ring was part of that, like.
But
trigger.
he was saying that Frank was saying out loud like commands, almost like saying out loud commands. So whoever was in command center was programming that into his character, and he just kept on dancing and doing like crazy flips, and it was a time period dance style too, where he was doing these little flips with his arms and stuff, and it's like, this is so weird. It felt weird, and then this is where it got really, like, you realize this is very ugly. This whole control. We're in control. Men, we're in control of everything, and the women are going to be happy, and they're going to be happy serving us and having sex with us, and they're going to do all of this, because it got to this point where he goes, who's in control of this world, and whose world is it? And all the men were yelling, ours! Yeah. Whose world is this? Ours. And it went from being just like a celebratory, like, yay, ours,
made it very clear that
his whole face changed into negative. And I literally looked at Willie and said, this is reminding me of like a Hitler speech or something, where you see this ugliness emanating out of the face, like out of control and like power hungry and angry. Like he seemed like there was like an anger underneath all of this. Yeah. But it was trying to put a pretty face on, we're just doing it to we just want our women to be happy. But it was really coming down to control.
Yes. All about control.
Okay. So we could go on forever talking about this movie, because there is so much social commentary in this movie. At the end of all of this, it is helping us to look at the treatment of others. It's helping us to look at gender roles. Yes. It's helping us to look at times past and times present, and how much we've changed or not changed.
The weird scenes with the dancers in sync and everything in unison. So there was a lot of other imagery of showing
imagery
of programming of people having to be in sync. Yes. And you got to be part of the whole.
And there's a mantra that keeps going on.
And then the symbolic nature of water here and there was symbolic to me. I was like, oh, that's very interesting. Why is water being shown? Because that's always a sign of people in water is like us in a womb with no control, really. Yeah.
It makes you think a lot about how far we've come, especially with the issues that are going on right now. Philosophically, there was an argument being made in this movie that the men were just, doing all, when we find out what's really going on, and I'm not going to tell you all of that, but when we find out what's really going on, there's a conversation that happens. And basically what the man is saying is, I did all of this for you. I work hard so that you could have all of this stuff in this virtual reality. I have to leave here every day and go out in the world and work really hard,
which
so
I
that
hate.
Which I hate, so that you could have all of this, so you could be happy. Meanwhile,
it's making
he chained her to a bed. And in the real reality, he has chained her to a bed, and every day forcing her eyes open, so that they could enter this virtual reality together, where she's the perfect wife, making food, having sex, probably while he's really having sex with her, and she's in this other realm. Okay.
So that's where the creepy part got. I
right.
think.
So, but he's saying that he's doing it all for
All for
her.
her.
Okay. And so there's a selfishness there, because when he was saying, I do all this for you and I go work and I hate it, they start to show us little clips
Of
of
the past.
he was lazy, she was a doctor,
Yes.
she was working her
30
ass
hours. She
off,
worked
and
a 30-hour
she'd come
shift.
home and he's not even working, and he said, I didn't even eat yet.
Yeah.
You didn't answer my calls, I didn't eat. Why didn't you eat? Well, you didn't answer my phone and I didn't know what you wanted. It was this weird thing about, he still, even when he was, before all this happened, he was lazy, so he hated working anyway.
Yeah.
And
And he
he
expected her to do
wanted a
something.
gender role. He
Yeah.
wanted her to be a proper woman
Yeah.
and cook for him, even though he's not working. And you weren't happy, you were working 30-hour days, where she said, you stole my life, because I was happy, I was helping people.
She was helping people, saving
If
people's
he
lives.
would have maybe been picking up his part of the bargain,
Yeah.
and
Working together.
This is what we talked about, is
Yeah.
that this whole idea of gender roles, and that women have to be a certain way and men have to be a certain way, because men also got locked into certain things back then.
Yeah.
They ended up having to do things they didn't want to do either, but it is so lopsided as far
Yeah.
as women not having control. All of that put aside, all of these constructs, right? The guy was trying to, the creator of all of this was trying to say it was all in our genetics, and men are supposed to be strong and women are supposed to be docile, and this is how they're supposed to serve men, and it's in the genetics. And the men that were doing this were selfishly driven,
They
because
were actually selfish.
they wanted their wives to be something other, because they
Than
wanted
who
to
they
be
were.
served, right, than who they were, because they wanted to be served and treated a certain way. And so they created this false narrative that the woman was happier when she was at home cooking and cleaning,
Didn't
and
have
they
to
were
worry
out doing.
about anything and letting the man do everything.
Meanwhile, all of these men that are in this picture, their wives are at home, probably chained up, being forced into this
we
virtual.
don't know to what extent.
Well,
Depends. Everyone's a little different, right? Circumstances.
Well, no, in
But it is
this, no,
possible.
it's not different, because in this movie, it tells you all these women did not know what was going on.
Yeah.
You can't consent
That's
to
right.
something you don't know is happening.
Only one woman did.
There's
remember?
only one woman, and she chose to be there because she had lost her children, and in that virtual reality,
She could be with them all
she
the
could
time.
be with her children all the time.
That was a spoiler. But
Everybody,
that was a good spoiler to know.
everybody else there, every
Didn't
other
know.
woman there did not know that it was a virtual reality.
And they felt something was weird when
but they all, when someone would come to an awareness, they would start to understand that something was off. Now, the other thing in this message that we talked about is at the very end. If someone dies in this reality,
they die
someone
in the real
really
world.
dies in the real world. And if someone dies, that couple has to exit the virtual reality, because you can't come back. And so they knew that as soon as one person dies in this reality, the other person has to escape,
Yeah.
because they're going to get killed.
Yes, they're gonna die.
The creator is going to kill that person to preserve all of this, so that nobody else is
knows
aware
about
of
it.
what's really going on. And so
Right.
that's the danger. And then at the very end, you see her, everyone's chasing her because she's going to this dome. And we never really know what is this dome. But
maybe if you see it, maybe you could throw some remarks down there. To
yes, of
see
what you
your
think
thoughts.
this
we
dome
could,
is.
We could just
Especially
go,
gamers.
We could be talking for
Hours
2 hours
about
this stuff, because there's so much to grasp on.
But one of the things we did talk about is that this is also social commentary for women supporting women.
Yes,
I
that's
recently
something I
did
was
a
talking
video
about.
on, I think it was 7 steps on how to support women, because powerful women support empowered women. And we all know as women that we aren't always supportive to other women. Women could tear other women down faster than anybody's business. And so this shows you a little of everything of what is possible. Women not listening to the other women, women not being there when the one girl, her friend is saying, I need help. I need your help. And she doesn't want to hear it, and she cuts her off, and then that girl dies,
And then feeling
And
regret.
then she feels regret, which is part of what stimulates all this, right? But then at the very end, one woman stands up and tells her, you need to get out of here now. You need to go. Take his car and leave because they're going to kill you. And then when she leaves, you see all the other women start to come together to realize something's off. And all of a sudden, the husbands are out of control.
They start freaking out a little
because
bit.
the women start to come together because they all realize something's wrong. And then at the very ending, I want you to tell me what you think, because at the very ending, the wife of the creator of all this, I'm not going to tell you what she does, but she says something. And I want you to tell me what you think what she says means. Okay, so if you see the movie...
Two different ways you could think about it, but it all depends.
It could be empowering others or it could be controlling others.
Yeah.
And so I want you to listen at the very end to what Frank's wife says, and I want you to put in the comments, what do you think she means by that? Because it really could go two ways, and I'm curious what you think.
In terms of, after watching this movie, the character building, I think it could have been better, because we still wanted to know some backstory on the main people who created this, right?
Yeah.
They didn't mention anything about that, which kind of left me hanging a little bit.
Yeah.
Right? We still was like, wait, what about...
We feel like things got
They showed
put
with
in
the
the
couple.
editing floor.
Yeah, definitely.
Like there was... Don't you feel like
Yeah.
there was so much that like we wanted to know so much more about the origins, you know, like we had to talk out a lot to just figure out, like, well, is this dome where all of them are laying? Are they all laying in that dome, or what is it? Well, I came to my own conclusion, which this is what I think. I think that dome was when you touched it, you tapped out.
Yeah, something happened.
Because they never go in. She never goes in the dome. She
Right.
touches it, and then it's almost like when you touch that dome, you turn off your gameplay.
Yeah. I'm not set on any idea.
That's what I
kind
think.
of gearing towards, but I never finalized my.
You
thoughts
tell
on
us
that.
in the comments if you saw this. What do you think that dome was? I don't think it's that's where everyone is laying. At first, I really thought that's what it was, but then I realized she never goes in. She touches it, and something woof happens, and then she's unconscious or coming in, comes back, almost like a reboot.
Yeah, like
right?
a reset.
I think touching that glass is where they tap out of the game, right? Because it's a virtual reality. And the reason why I don't think it is a place where they're all laying in this virtual reality is because they literally show us physically how he has her restrained in her apartment,
in their own apartment.
in the real world.
Yeah.
He's got her restrained on the bed in her legs, arms and legs restrained with chains and leather straps, and forcing her eyes open to take in this virtual reality.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's why I don't think that's what it is. Now, people who are gamers might have a better idea of how to explain this, but to me, it just means that when she touches that, she shuts off her virtual reality. That's what I think. And I think that there were people there watching all these people that somehow put her back in the game the first time she does it.
A game? You always say game as opposed. I guess it is. You could say a game.
To me, it's like a virtual reality. It's like this game where, it's like The Sims.
Can be a game.
Like The Sims, right? Yeah. It's like where they're all building houses.
Yeah. Yeah,
See.
before we give it our screams, we're talking real brief, which is important. I know we've been talking a long time, so thank you for your patience. It's a fresh movie, so there's a lot of stuff to talk about. We're going back and forth discussing, we always discuss when we watch a movie, when we go to a theater, is it worth to, this was good that we saw the movie in a theater as opposed to waiting for it on the big screen, as opposed to waiting for it to be on, Amazon Prime or renting it at home. And we were kind of going back and forth on that. And you were kind of like, no, I think it could have been, I could have waited to watch this at home.
Yeah, I could have waited for Netflix.
Is there a reason why? Well, I can't remember your thoughts on it.
Well, that gets into the screams. So should we talk screams and then go into that?
Okay, let's talk into screams.
Okay, so I'll answer that question by giving you my screams. So
you got any screams today? We got a guest hanging out. I didn't realize we had this board.
So I think Um, I think I'm going to give it 3.9 screams because it took a long time to get to it. It
Which that's definitely a scream
No,
lower for you.
yeah, well, I'm okay with, I have patience to get to a point, but I feel like once it got to the point, it wasn't clear enough to me what was going on. And that's why I say I think that there was a lot that was on the editing floor. And I feel like they could have taken out some of the socialness or cut it slightly shorter in order to give us a little more backstory, right?
Yeah.
Like give us a little snippet here and there of the originators, or maybe a little bit more of the history of the, this virtual reality and the guy creating it, even if it was a clip of it, so that we got this understanding. No matter where they
Just to make the
decided,
connection.
no matter where they decided to put it in, even if it was all at the end, I feel
Yeah.
like it was so hard. Like I think we probably talked for like an hour and a half after this, just trying to figure out and talk through
What the
what
heck
did it
just
mean.
happened? What the
Like
heck
what
just
did it mean?
happened?
And that frustrates me a little bit when it's so confusing
And we go
that
back and forth.
that I
We
don't
can't-
I have to, like, normally I wouldn't think this hard, about it.
Yeah.
I would just kind of let it go and I wouldn't know. But because I'm doing a spooky review, I need to understand it more and explain it more. And so this required a lot of conversation to try and figure out and break down what it means, versus them telling us enough about it that I didn't have to do all this laborious kind of brain work to try and figure out
Yeah.
what was going on, or what did they mean by that, or how did all these people get there? Are they physically there and they're just kind of brainwashed in this like cult, or is this a virtual reality? Are all of their bodies in that dome? Or I had to I was asking myself a lot of questions during the movie, which kind of takes you out of it because I'm
Yeah.
trying to figure out what it is I'm seeing. So kind of some of that is kind of great, that it's making me think about all of that stuff. There's tons of social commentary in that, but I do feel like I could have seen this at home on Netflix and I would have been okay with seeing it, on that or Prime or something
Yeah.
like that, because I didn't feel like it. I feel like it was a really high quality, like, filming and all of that stuff. The visuals are beautiful and all that
I
stuff.
guess if you have a big screen at home,
I just didn't feel like they were showing anything in particular, though, that was like, like Fantastic Beasts, where it's
Yeah.
like,
But
wow, you got to
sometimes-
see that
yeah.
on big screen because it's so
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
fantastic. I felt like we've seen palm trees. We've
Yeah.
seen nice 50s cars. We've seen nice 50s
Yeah, I see.
houses, clean, very clean. We've seen pretty girls in
I think
vintage dresses.
Yeah. So I think I probably give it just probably the same amount of screams, maybe between 3.8 and 4. I'm kind of thinking around there because
Yeah. I'm
the
almost at a
incompletion.
4,
I'm
but
almost at a
because they
4,
made
but-
me think too much about it after,
and
it
wasn't.
makes me a
It
little
was.
irritated.
It was a different type. Yeah. So it was definitely because it brings out other issues and stuff if you're in tune with what's going on with today.
Yeah.
So that was one little thing, but also, yeah, I think that was the same as you. Just kind of
Yeah.
those little things of wanting a little bit more about, like at the end when they try to wrap things up
Yeah.
and go, oh, this is how this happened. Oh, this how. But then they left out the most important thing, like the main people who created this thing and what was their backstory, because that's very important to
Yeah,
try
and
to
they
find.
could have given us a little bit more about just even the development of maybe, because the story wasn't meant to be about the creator's backstory, but maybe just telling us a little bit more about the virtual reality.
I know.
You know what
They
I
just
mean?
went
Like,
right into it,
because
yeah.
they did try and give some, but it felt like they were trying
They're
to
rushing
cram
it
so
at the
much.
end. Yeah.
So much information, and they weren't giving you enough to really piece it all together, and so it left me having to wonder about all of these things, and then sitting there and trying to really go back and figure out what was going on, because I wanted to understand, how did this all come to be.
That's always fascinating how things get
Yeah.
in its fruition. That's why.
Yeah, like how did it come to be? Because there were so many questions, from the visuals they did show us. We had to piece them together. Like in at the end, it's almost like a bunch of little clips, and you're like, well, what does that clip mean when he's in the hallway walking up to the door with flowers? Like that could be kind of something that you throw away in your mind because you're not putting it together because it was so conceptual in the end that it made it really difficult to figure out what it is. Why did they show us that? So a lot of people will miss that and never even understand why was he at the door with flowers.
Yeah, I think, and going back to the screams and want to watch it either in the big screen, I'm kind of neutral on that.
I think you side more with seeing it on the big screen.
Yeah, because
because you don't like that I said Netflix is fine.
Yeah, but I like the bigger vast. I think if you want to feel and see the to get inside of it a little bit more, to try to feel the anxiety. That's all. I wanted to feel the environment, so I think on the big screen was really nice in that part, just to kind of feel in and get closer to the actors' faces to feel the acting, because I thought the acting was really good.
Yeah, the acting was top notch.
But unless you have a big home screen and everything at home, then you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, like it was all top notch. It was just more the story itself and it being a little conceptual, especially at the end, made it really difficult to understand what was really going on. I think they drove home their point about they wanted people to go home talking about gender roles and misogyny and who we are today as people and who we were. And I don't even know if we fleshed this out enough, but talking about, like, when you and I talked about gender roles, because we talked a little bit about how people would get stuck in roles, men and women alike, and people still do that today. But it's really about, I think we're evolving into partnerships, and sometimes it's the woman who's working more hours, and maybe in this scenario the woman was working a lot more and she was a doctor, and maybe he could have been a good partner to her. And maybe he could have known, I'm not working right now and I love my wife, I'm going to cook dinner and I'm going to help around the house, and he could have played that role. The one thing that it made us talk about is you could, every relationship has its own, like, its own dynamic, and it's not up to, like, it's not necessarily a society type of thing that needs to be decided and blanketed and everybody lives by that blanket rule. I think that each relationship you have to decide your own.
Yeah, exactly. I think also at the end, and letting people follow their dreams and be supportive of your partner's dreams. That's kind of a little hint at the end that you could get from this. Like, be supportive of, and you see this
and that's
dynamic
kind of
and
the
what's
healing
going.
Message.
That's kind of the message at the end. Like, you could go there and go, okay, this is what happened, of course, but at the end you could step back and go, okay, if you're in a relationship or someone, you support each other and you make things work a certain way to make each other successful, not vice versa. Don't let these society norms or old norms affect the success of other people. And making these false judgments or
just let each family, each couple decide what's right for them, and that's the world you live in.
And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
Yeah, and because you were saying they were headed for divorce.
Right when I saw that, I'm like, that wasn't
going
to last. I'm like, that's.
And maybe he knew that, and that's why he forced her into this, because he loved her. He loved her, but he wanted his selfish way of how he could
love her.
He wanted her to be the way he wanted her to be, which was subservient. And so I think in the healing aspect of this, because we always like to talk about the healing messages, I think that there are a lot of things that you can talk about in regards to healing, because it has to do with, supporting one another. It has to do with, take a look at, are you putting people in gender roles? Are you being inclusive or exclusive? Are you open to everybody just being able to be who they are? Or are you trying to put people in boxes? Do you make blanket statements about people or people's way of life? Or I mean, there are so many different things that you can talk about. It's all social commentary, and it's really geared towards you not really understanding when you leave what the whole movie is about. It's really about you leaving and having the conversation with whoever you're with about what it was about, and that is going to cause dialogue and talking about what you guys think about certain things that were showcased in this movie. And as friends or couples, you talk out those ideas so that you can come together.
Yeah, it actually did do that, huh? That's kind of what it does. So be ready to discuss if you're on a date or with your significant other,
or friends,
whatever.
Be ready to have some conversations
because it will come up, I think. Like, or it's one of those movies that you just talk about. You can't just be like, oh, that was a pretty good movie. What you think? Yeah, that was pretty good. Yeah, I like the way she died at the end. You know, yeah, it was cool. Go guys. Screw women. Yeah, they don't need anything. Make my meals. You know what I mean?
Your 5-course meal. Give me my 5-course meal.
Anyways.
That is this bonus episode of our trip to the movies watching Don't Worry Darling. I hope to see you guys back here next week. Every Friday we upload a new episode of Spooky Review, and I hope to see you back next week. Please like and subscribe. Leave some comments down below. If you have any suggestions, let us know. That is a wrap.
That's a wrap.
And that's it for Spooky Review.
I keep it dirty.